Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. We have once again got Norway Chess, and today it is another big match. Norway Chess continues to deliver these daily. It is Magnus Carlsen, Hikaru Nakamura, their first encounter of this event. It is a double round robin after all, and it really delivered, these two fighting blow for blow. But that was not the only match. We also had the Battle of the Indians, Gukesh, the world champion, versus Arjun Erigaisi, probably his closest challenger, maybe. We'll see. What makes these events so interesting in the men's section and also the women's section, we've got the current world champions, and they are without challengers at the moment. So we're really seeing who's going to step up and take it to the champions. We saw Magnus defeat Gukesh yesterday. Arjun defeated Wei Yi in the Armageddon, and Hikaru defeated Fabiano in the Classical. So let's get into the games. The first game I have to show you. Gukesh versus Arjun. Now, don't be upset with me that I'm starting with this one. Time codes are in the description down below, or in the video. You can go to the games that you want to see. Anyway, Arjun Erigaisi's got the white pieces against Gukesh, and he elects to start off with d4. We get knight to f6, c4, and e6, and knight to c3. This does allow a Nimsa Indian, but Gukesh makes a strange decision. Not really. He plays bishop to b4, the Nimsa Indian. g3, which is an interesting setup. Castles bishop to g2, and now d5. The most principled way to play. Really, Gukesh down a couple minutes, but not really much at the moment. a3, bishop takes, pawn takes, and now d takes on c4. This is all well-known theory, but Arjun did say he was a little bit surprised that Gukesh already stopped to think. Arjun was up on time for large portions of this game. And here he comes up with a very interesting idea. He plays a4. Very interesting idea. The idea is simply to put the bishop over there and let it patrol this long diagonal and have this bishop. In exchange for taking this free pawn, which only looked free at the time, you've opened up a Maifian Ketsu bishop, and I've got this coming here. It's almost like a type of Catalan system. Anyway, we get c5 from Gukesh, and now bishop to a3. And now what do? We get a5, queen a5, putting pressure on the pawn, and now queen c2. The pawn on c5 is still hanging, so we play rook d8. Bishop takes the pawn back, and now knight a6. This was Gukesh's big idea, but he's down an hour on time. He attacks the rook and the knight and loses the pawn in the center of the board. There was really no way to defend it properly. Knight to f3 kicks out the rook drops back, and we take the knight, damaging the pawn structure. All of this well thought out by the two players. And now knight d2, not castling yet, but we first block the pin, attacking the pawn. The queen drops back, and now a5. Still not castling, because there are other priorities in the position. And now after rook b8, now we can play move 17, castles. And the position is level. Gukesh has got out of the way. He's moved his rook, so now this bishop at some point can move when it's not being blocked by this rook. He does have a damaged pawn structure, but his pieces will be a bit more active, and he's also up a pawn. He is still up a pawn, which Arjun will have to gain back at some point. But in exchange for that pawn, Arjun has got very good activity of all of his pieces being well coordinated and active. Gukesh for the pawn is choking on all of his pieces. So, sometimes a pawn is not all it's cracked up to be. Anyway, why is b5 not being played? b5. Is it being played? What's going on? I think my computer's freezing. Okay, b5. A takes b6, and a takes b6. So we take en passant. Now the knight's under pressure, not being attacked, and we place our knight into the center, knight to e4 from Arjun. King g7, just preventing any forks, and now g4. We're using that pawn now to go and attack. Knight to c5, offering a trade. We don't trade. Arjun has to continue to play dynamically, and now queen e5. Gukesh seems to have got himself out of trouble. Rook a d1, b5, and f4. Arjun is going for it. He's now used some time. He's really thought about this position, and he's just going for it. He is pushing all of his stuff to launch a big attack on Gukesh's king. Meanwhile, Gukesh does have a 2-on-1 here, which will simplify to a 1-on-nothing, and he's going to have a passport. Sorry, excuse me just a moment. Sorry. I should have had water before I came on to talk. Anyway, queen e3 check, and now king slides over, and we get rook takes d1. Now, the commentators were talking of a line at some point when there was this check, but the rook wasn't here, and then the rook would come in, and then there would be back rank problems much earlier. Anyway, rook takes d1, queen takes d1. You might say, well, why queen takes d1? Isn't this a free pawn? No, because you hang mate in 7, ironically enough, starting with knight to h5. And the king has to come forward, and then queen d8 is the killer blow, getting in from the back, and just mate in 5. So no, you can't take the pawn. So queen e3 check, rook takes, queen takes, you don't hang the pawn, and now bishop c6. Oh, hang on. Yeah, sorry, knight d7, and now bishop c6, and now Gukesh has a few moves that keep the game level. He can play b4, looking to invest in his pass pawn. And you might say, but hang on, b4, doesn't this hang a knight after all these trades? Yeah, because there's a trick here. You don't trade everything. So let's say we go back. Bishop takes d7. What you would play in this position is bishop b7 check. Oops. And it's just really bad. You've got to play like rook f3, sack the rook, this pawn falls. So not everything looks as simple as it is. So what we have then is a decisive blunder here from Gukesh. He plays rook b6, which was not one of the moves, and it fails for one move only, and Arjun finds it. It's knight to h5 check, and king to h8 now has to be played, and now we can play rook f3. Now this doesn't come with check anymore, so we are threatening to win the knight, and it doesn't have any really good squares to go to. We can play queen c5, but now it's just bishop takes d7. Rook d6 looks like a fork, but now the queen slides over, and even though you can pin my rook to my king, I just play e4, and I'm just in time. You can take the bishop back, but this is going to be a decisive attack on the black king with the knight coming in, with the pawns coming in. Arjun just has to keep his king safe and keep his nerves and keep his 23-minute time advantage, and he will be home and clear, and he will defeat the world champion, and Gukesh will suffer back-to-back defeats. So, knight takes f6. Rook d3, trying to get this as a pass pawn. Well, firstly, if you take, you're removing defense of this, and c takes d3 is now a draw. The knight is still defending this, but it's now a draw because of this pass pawn that you can invest in. So we don't get that. Instead, we get queen to h4. You might say, but hang on, sacking the rook. No, mate. Threatening mate. So king g7 gets out of mate. We now take the rook and allow the pass pawn. Maybe not the best decision from Arjun. It loses some advantage. Knight, rather h5 again. King g8. And now check. And now the queen drops back. And now we can pick up the pawn. But f5 from Gukesh. Bold and brave as ever. Looking to exploit the pin. And this monster bishop on the king. King g8. King g1 is something I would play. But instead we get queen d7. Threatening all sorts of problems. So even though you can now play bishop takes e4 check, it gets played. King g1 is fine, and now bishop d5. And here, Arjun has one move only that is winning. Can you spot it? It's queen takes b5. You must take this pawn. And now you are winning, and you will push this pawn, and you will have threats on the king the whole time, and this black queen just can't get to this white king in time. Instead of that, he plays g takes f5, which allows queen c5 check. The king slides over, and now check, and now the king here, and check, forcing the queens off the board. And it is now a draw. And it was a draw. Still, up until this point, we did sacrifice the pawn, and it was a draw up until here. King e7 maybe wasn't the most accurate, and now king d2. And now king d6 is a blunder. King f6 was better to go and patrol this pawn. because king d6 allows knight e4 check, and king here, and now king e3. And b3 is an inaccuracy, and there are two moves that win here, one of which is knight to f6, but the cleaner win is knight to c3 check, because the knight will defend the promotion square, and now the king can get rolling. Instead of that, after b3, we have f6. A blunder from Arjun. He blunders the game back to a draw. King drops back to e6, f5 check, king moves up. We have to drop our king back to d2 and pawn push and check, and we get here just in time to win this pawn. And oh no, bishop f1. I'm sorry guys, I can't be too excited, it's really late here. Bishop f1, a devastating blunder. There are two moves here that hold for black, and that is how desperate the position is, and they are to play bishop to d5 or to play h5. Those are the two moves that you can play as black that kind of hold this position together. Instead, he plays bishop to f1, and now the knight drops back, and this is completely winning. And Arjun makes no mistakes. Second, third time round, it is, and the check, and this is completely winning for white. Gukesh resigns. And with that, we will move on to probably what the game you're looking forward to the most. It is Magnus Carlsen. It is Hikaru Nakamura. This was their classical game. Hikaru had the white pieces, and we have e4, e5, knight to f3, knight to c6, and bishop b5, a Spanish. If you were watching my channel most recently, you will know I've been putting out some Spanish videos, and it is a very interesting opening. a6, bishop to a4, and knight to f6, the main line. d3, not allowing an open Spanish. If Magnus would have gone for that, bishop to c5, and short castles. d6, and c3. And I've covered all of this in my opening video, plugged somewhere on the channel. Short castles. Now knight bd2, the bishop drops back, and now h3, preventing the pin on g4. Knight to e7, and this is a Spanish. They just maneuver, and takes, and takes. And this really early clarification of the center is very interesting, because there's no tension, so it's going to be down to piece activity as to how the players are going to make progress. This dark split bishop is open when the knight moves for possibilities on f2, but equally this bishop, the light square bishop, has got three diagonals it can go onto that all pose problems. So it's still very, very tense. The players have spent some time, but not a lot. Now c5 kicks the knight out the center. It drops back to f3, and now b5. Magnus using his pawns very well. When Magnus pushes pawns, he does it for a reason. He doesn't like them to be overextended, but he does them for a reason. They're very secure. And now I very much am warm to Magnus's position here. He's got a very nice piece activity. a4 from Hikaru, striking back against that structure, and c4, locking everything down. And bishop d2 is maybe a little bit slow. The best move here is probably bishop to e4, putting pressure on the knight, not threatening to take it, but just getting pieces active in the game, and now this bishop can also come out as well. Instead, after this, and now queen c7, and knight d4, and b4, Magnus has got the initiative. It's almost -1. Magnus is seizing control. But we know about Hikaru. He's a resilient defender. Even though he's down on time, he's resilient. Queen g4. It is now -1 officially. Rook ae8. We bring our rook a d1, b takes c3, pawn takes c3, and now knight to f6 kicks out the queen. Queen drops back, offering an exchange, and instead Magnus plays queen to a5, and queen g5, and now queen takes g5. An inaccuracy from Magnus Carlsen, and whatever advantage he had is gone. Knight to e4, bishop takes e4, bishop takes e4, knight to d2, kicks out the bishop, it drops back to d5, knight to c2, rook takes e1, rook takes e1, rook c8, defending the pawn, knight to b4, bishop b7, knight e4, a5, kicking out the knight. We go for danger levels, threatening the rook and the bishop. The rook defends itself, or moves out the way, and we play knight to c2, bishop c6, and now bishop to e3. And here the players agreed to a draw. They did have 6 minutes on the clock. It was a competitive game, but kind of after the queens got traded, they traded a couple more pieces, and there's no progress to be made here. The line would go like this, and something like bishop takes a4, something like this, rook a1, and these pawns would all get traded, and this would become a draw. So we will see more from these players in just a moment. They are going to Armageddon. And now, the final classical game, Fabiano Caruana and Wei Yi. Wei Yi struggled yesterday in the Armageddon. He did survive with a draw against Arjun in the classical. Fabiano Caruana, a devastating endgame loss against Hikaru Nakamura. How does he bounce back? Wei Yi has got the white pieces, and he goes for e4. We get c5 from Fabiano, knight to f3, knight to c6, going for a classical, and now bishop to b5. The Rossolimo variation of the Sicilian. e6, c3, d5, d3, and this is a very interesting structure. This is where I first saw the game, and I just thought, where did this structure come from? I didn't think of it as Sicilian, but it makes sense. It was a Rossolimo. Eventually the knight will come here, and Fabiano Caruana knows these Sicilians so well, even though he's down on time. Bishop to d7 now breaks the pin. Queen e2, very fascinating move. Not developing any of the minor pieces, but playing queen e2 in the hopes to open up the center of the board and open up against the black king. But simply knight ge7, h5, or rather h4. And here was a big moment for Fabiano Caruana, because his idea would have been to play knight to g6, and that runs into h5 and then h6, and Wei Yi is attacking him before he is settled. So he has a big decision to make, and he decides to solve his problems with h5. That comes with its own set of problems, because although now you can get knight to g6, both my knight and my bishop have got a permanent outpost on g5. You can argue, but doesn't black have the same outpost? Okay, well, your knight can't get there unless it's by magic. And this bishop will probably end up on a different diagonal, so it's not as much a weakness for white. So we get castles from white, d4, very brave choice, and now b4. Very strange. C takes b4 is the clear best move here, right? Because you might say, but knight takes. Well, we take with check, queen takes, and now we can play knight takes d4, c takes d4. And this is completely fine for white. White has got a slight edge. You'll bring your knight out this way. You'll put your bishop onto g4, and you'll just get your rooks into the center of the board. I don't understand why b4 was played. It's a little bit pushing too much, maybe. And now we kick out the bishop drops back, and now knight to g6 puts pressure on that pawn that you pushed. And hello, that pawn is hanging for the moment, so we probably have to play b takes c5. We do something immediately. The bishop takes, and we now remove the knight. And we take in the center, and we give up the bishop, and we get this position. We'll stop it here maybe after bishop to d2 and queen to d7. What's going on here? Well, it's a drawn position. Wei Yi has got more central pawns. He's got 2. Fabiano only has 1. But Fabiano does have a clear 2-on-1 on the queen side. And he's going to have that Sicilian pressure with an open c-file for himself. He's probably going to play short castles at some point, or maybe he might just play king f8 or king g8, keeping the rook here for attacking possibilities. Wei Yi's committed his king. Not to mention, as I said, that h-pawn for both sides are going to be weak, as I can't click circles. There we go. So now, what are the plans for both sides? Well, white needs to finish their development. Like, black can go either way and get their rooks into the game in a moment's notice. You've probably got to make 1 or 2 moves with your knight, deciding where you want it to go. Maybe knight to a3 to go to c4, something like that. So, Wei Yi plays knight to a3, and Fabiano e5. Perfect. Shuts out this dark squared bishop. It now no longer sees the entire diagonal. You might say, but hang on. Go back a second. Isn't this hanging? Rook g8. And let's say you go back, right? Knight f4. And not all pawns are worth it. So, knight takes d4, and we go all the way here. Play knight to a3, e5, and now knight putting pressure. Also threatening various checks and stuff, but simply queen e6 stops everything in its tracks. And now g3, preventing knight to f4. So we play rook d8, knight to e3, looking to get control of some of these weakened light squares. And now we play knight to e7, just counteracting whatever it is you want to do. Whatever Wei Yi cooks up, Fabiano is just a step ahead. And now Wei Yi f4. You can simply here play rook fd1. And you can play rook a c1 in the future and just sit with this. I think Wei Yi got a bit agitated or something. He doesn't seem like someone who gets agitated, but you want something to happen. So he invests time and he plays f4. This is just too weakening. Because now we play bishop b5. A beautiful move, putting pressure. And now you can play rook ad1, but we just get e takes f4. Rook takes f4, and now f6. Knight to f5 may be the final mistake. Fabiano is now definitely in the ascendancy. The best move in this position was to simply play rook f2. Bring the rook back. Maybe you can double. Don't hang this pawn. And maybe then you can play knight to f5 or something. Instead, we had knight to f5 immediately. And now that just runs into knight takes f5. Yes, you can play rook takes f5. But now we've got queen takes a2. And there are too many problems in the white position, and there is like two moves that hold here. One of them is easily findable, rook to d2. It defends everything, and you can just play like queen a6 back, and black is fine but not great. The other choice you have here is to play rook f2, which to me looks a lot scarier, and the engine doesn't like. It has to think about it quite a bit. Instead of that, Wei Yi plays rook takes h5. And his idea is simply to trade rooks, and he will sack the bishop, but get his queen down the board, and he will take. I think what he missed is that in this position, black can castle. And all of his ideas have gone out the window. Now he plays rook a1, and simply queen f7. Fabiano Caruana has no material advantage. The white king is going to be exploited. The black king is perfectly safe, and there is nothing you can do about it. We get rook f5 as Wei Yi tries, but he loses the pawn on d3, and rook takes b5. Looks like you remove the defender, but simply queen to c4, and Wei Yi resigns. There are too many problems in the white position, and Fabiano Caruana bounces back. Now, we must go to Armageddon. Hikaru Nakamura, Magnus Carlsen. A reminder of Armageddon, Hikaru will get 10 minutes, Magnus will get 7. But Magnus, if the game ends in a draw, wins the game. You get 1.5 points for winning in Armageddon. So, who will take the official lead? We get knight to f3, so a difference already from their classical game. d5 and then g3. Hikaru going for like a King's Indian attack. g6, d4, bishop g7, bishop g2. Knight to f6, short castles, short castles. What are the overall strategies of playing something in Armageddon? Well, white has got a couple of ideas. You want to play quickly, really. You want to maintain a time advantage, because even when you get to move 40, when you start getting bonus time, you don't have it from move 1, it's not going to be a lot. So black is always going to be under time pressure. 2, you have to win the game. So you can win on time, obviously. But you want to play something where you're always playing for something. You don't want to trade pieces. You want to always have a nice advantage. That's probably why Hikaru chose the system, because he's playing against Magnus. Now, you don't do something too theoretical. You want Magnus to be thinking from early and using up that time. So we get c4, c6, and now this looks like a Catalan. This really does. Queen b3 though, and now d takes, queen takes, and bishop to f5. Knight to c3, and knight bd7, bishop to f4. The players are just developing their pieces. Magnus has spent like 30 seconds. Hikaru spent about a minute 15. Knight b6, queen drops back, and now the knight plants in the center. And really, considering it's an Armageddon, I like Magnus's position. He's activated all of his pieces, so he's going to be causing Hikaru problems. Hikaru can't just do whatever he wants. Sorry, excuse me. Now, this might look like a fork. It's not, because simply you would take And then if takes, knight gives check or whatever. So we get bishop e5, looking to trade off the dark squared bishops. Knight takes c3, b takes c3, and now bishop to e4, looking to trade. Now we get bishop takes g7, king takes g7, and rook ac1. Magnus is happy to trade off pieces. The time advantage is dwindling for Hikaru, although Magnus has really started to think. And now we get c5 for Magnus. Remember, he doesn't have to play for a win, so he's happy to just cocoon, trade off pieces, and make a draw. Hikaru needs to continue to play for something. D takes c5, puts pressure on the knight, but the knight drops back, and now how do you defend that pawn? Hikaru has given Magnus something to work with. If this was a classical game, you really back Magnus to play this for a long time, because Hikaru has got structural weaknesses. Magnus can exploit this maybe as an advantage. He's going to get play with the rooks on the c-file. He might be able to trade, but he's got the inherent weakness of his own dark squares. Hope I'm not talking too quickly. Queen b4. Now, knight to f6, bishop to h3. A very interesting move. What that means is you could take and double and just continue to worsen Hikaru's structure. But that might not be the best thing, because now this bishop is really active and you can't put your rook on c8. Obvious drawback. But we get queen c7. The knight now jumps out the way. So maybe the bishop to e5 plan disappeared. And now b6. Takes. So Magnus damages his own structure, but now activates his rook without having to move it. So we get queen b2, defending the pawn. And now rook a4. Bishop e6 is a lovely tactic from Magnus Carlsen. He wants to reroute his bishop to be on a diagonal facing the black king. Now you might say, why can't you take? Well, you just blunder a fork. You take into a fork, so that bishop is untouchable. Bishop to e6. Now we play rook to a5, which is a bit strange. Why would you play rook a6 and then rook a4 and then rook a5? And now we drop the bishop back. E5 kicks the knight out the center, so we get knight to c2, and Hikaru's pieces have been forced into like a piece cube. It looks like a Tetris piece. So Magnus really has got some good stuff going here, and he plays h5. And Hikaru here plays h4, which is a mistake. Reason it's a mistake, Magnus is going to be able to actually get away with something like g5 in the future, and he's going to be able to get to Hikaru's king, because he could just slide his king out the way, and then you've got problems. You're not equipped really to play on the king side. So Magnus plays knight to g4, which is an inaccuracy. And there are several moves here that hold nicely for Hikaru, but he doesn't find any of them. He instead plays knight to a3. And that allows g5, which is a mistake, but it's g5. And now, yes, you can get your knight all the way to c4. Congratulations. G takes h4. And here Hikaru plays f3. A huge blunder. What does he blunder? He blunders queen c5 check. And now after king to h1, there are two moves that are really winning for Magnus Carlsen. One of which is to simply play h takes g3. Simply, to just take the pawn. There's a rook hanging and there's a bishop hanging. You take a pawn. Not always findable, particularly with Magnus having 90 seconds. The other one is to just save your rook and play like rook a6. Because you save your rook and you might be able to rotate it this way. What you can also do is you can also play queen e7, and this is an idea that will come up in just a moment. Let the engine think about it. It's not as good as it's not as bad as it looks. You can play queen e7. Sorry, I need to rub my eye. You can play queen e7 because the idea will be to infiltrate on the h-file. That is the idea. Instead, Magnus plays bishop a8. I don't understand it. Rook a6 is, according to the engine, the best move. And now you can take. And now Magnus has two moves. And in reality, probably only has one on deeper analysis. So he can here, has to ignore the knight. Do not take the knight with either piece. You have to play h takes g3, or you have to play queen e7. A reminder, queen e7 and you are getting in. You have to infiltrate and attack the white king. Now you have no choice. You are down material. You must go and try and get something on this king. Remember, a draw is fine for Magnus Carlsen. So if he gets a perpetual, he wins. But instead he plays b takes a5. And that now allows e4 blocking the diagonal of the bishop. The knight is now hanging. We now play h takes g3. It is still -1 for Magnus Carlsen, but bishop d5. And now we trade off the bishops. And yes, you can get knight to e3. I just bring my rook over, which is not even a good move. And now here, Magnus Carlsen has got 18 seconds. Hikaru Nakamura has got a minute. They're only getting 10 seconds increment at move 40. They are currently on move 34. Magnus Carlsen has got to make 6 moves in 18 seconds. And we get c4. And now queen d4 is the mistake from Magnus Carlsen. The only winning move here to continue to play was f6. If you can explain that to me in 18 seconds or less, congratulations, you might be able to beat Magnus Carlsen. He plays queen d4, which makes logical sense. You're centralizing the queens, you're trading the queens off. It's not enough because you're down in exchange. And now, even though Hikaru makes a blunder with a d6, allowing king f6 of all things to come and collect the pawn, it's not going to be good enough. Sorry, where am I? He instead plays rook b8. Ooh, what happened there? Yeah. So d6, rook cd1 was best, and now rook b8, Magnus blunders back. It's still a draw. It's still a draw. Magnus has got 13 seconds. He'll be fine. We offer a rook trade. You can't trade the rooks, but he plays rook d8. Ironically enough, you just needed to go one square, rook c8. Put pressure on this. This pawn is not a problem until you push it one more square too far, and then you play rook d8, and then you're fine. Instead, he plays the immediate rook d8, and that allows c5. And now king to f6 is too late, and Magnus Carlsen goes down. Rook c8. We get all the way here. We block with the knight. Rook force traded because here, and then queen. And after Hikaru Nakamura queens, Magnus Carlsen resigns. Hikaru Nakamura gets the win over Magnus Carlsen in Norway Chess round 2. And puts him near the top of the leaderboard, if not right at the top. Just trying to think. Arjun won in Armageddon, so he'll be tied with Arjun. I think Magnus will be second, and he'll be tied with Fabiano Caruana. Or no, Fabio will only be on 3 points. So yeah, Magnus will be in sole second, second place according to points, and that is Norway Chess, ladies and gentlemen, round 2.